Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Johnny. If this is the first time we're meeting, on my channel I talk about criminal investigations and kind of take you behind the scenes on how law enforcement does procedures, investigative techniques, things like that. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. Now, I didn't really want to make this video because when this came across the wire and I saw it, my heart was broken because there was a Yonkers Police Sergeant, had 24 years, 3 months on the job, was killed by a 16-year-old that doesn't know how to drive and ended up killing him. He's married, has a family, and now he's gone because of some punk that decided he was a race car driver and with a permit and didn't even have a license to be driving by himself and decided to get in a BMW and be an ass and end up smacking into somebody. So I'm going to break down a little bit about how investigators are going to go about determining this kid's speed and a couple techniques that we use in crash investigations. Unfortunately, I went to hundreds of crashes. I can't count how many fatal crashes myself and my team investigated over the 20-something years. It was the worst part, getting that call out in the middle of the night with somebody that's been killed in a crash. And I can tell you that a majority of those were preventable. So I'm going to give you a little taste of how we go about investigating these things, or how they're going to go about investigating these things as well. But just keep in mind, this is just a very, very brief synopsis. The course that we take to be crash investigators is 6 weeks long, and it's very intensive, a lot of math and a lot of practice. So I'm just going to give you an overview on how they may determine speeds for charges for this kid that killed him out of neglect on his own. All right, I'm going to play a quick clip of the actual coverage that happened. Okay.
Frank Guadino leaves behind a wife and 2 children and was set to retire this summer. He was on duty when a BMW slammed into his vehicle head on. The whole thing was caught on this newly released surveillance video.
Police say the driver is only 16 years old and only has a learner's permit. Police say he shouldn't have been driving without an...
That's right. He should not have been driving at all. All right. This was a completely preventable accident. This kid that didn't know how to drive, thought he was a hot dog, and ended up killing somebody. Now, I hope he recovers. I don't want to have ill will against this young driver. He made a mistake. He's going to pay for that on however they decide to make him held accountable for that. So I hope he makes it through. He's got some severe injuries too, so I hope he makes it through as well. But this was all preventable, and he shouldn't have been doing what he did. So in this video, I'm going to break down a little bit of how investigators are going to come up with some speeds that this kid was going in order to determine the kind of charges that may be filed against him. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, as you can imagine, there's going to be extensive damage to both of these vehicles. So you're probably asking, how are they going to determine how fast this guy was going? Okay, there's one easier way to tell what was happening prior to his crash. Now, as you can imagine, there's severe damage to this car, right? The suspect vehicle, the light blue car, the BMW, got into a sideways yaw, as you saw in the video, and then hit the front of the unmarked patrol car, causing the extensive damage to that. So here's one way that they're going to try to do that, is they're going to try to, number one, recover an event data recorder, all right? And they can use crash data retrieval software to go into this black box, if you want to call it that. That's kind of what it resembles. And then they can get information off that with software, with different cables, with different makes and models. And then they can continue on to get a lot of information about what this car was doing 5 seconds prior to impact. Now you're going to see on this diagram here, this little box, right around this section here on the top left, it's like there's the times, the 5 seconds prior to crash. You're going to see in this example 42 something miles an hour, 42.9 I think it is, 5 seconds prior to the crash. It'll tell you if they're on the accelerator, or if they're at a certain speed and they're just kind of dormant on the accelerator, the brakes, the engine RPMs, if the ABS got activated. So it basically says that 5 seconds prior to them reacting to that crash or the impact, what happened in that car. It's going to start giving you all this data. And then to 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. So you can see in this example here, it went from 42 to 40 and it starts going down in speed. So obviously the vehicle's slowing down. Now they're at the accelerator pedal. If there's zero pressing on the accelerator, just at a constant speed, you're going to see that, if they're pushing on it, coming off of it, and in these braking exercises. Why is that important? Because it tells you at least, what that car was doing prior to that crash. So if it's a 25-mile-an-hour zone, it's going to tell you, well, at least 5 seconds prior, it was going 42 to that speed limit. So that gives the investigators a little bit of a tool that they can use to help assess the speed of this vehicle. So now you're probably asking, all right, what if the box is destroyed? They can't get to it. It's mangled. There was a power failure, anything that could disrupt this box to make it not available to get any data out of it. Well, there's some other techniques that crash investigators use. And one is what happens is you have to start from point of rest. And usually when a vehicle comes to point of rest, you start to go backwards from that. If it's an uncontrolled point of rest, it doesn't hit anything. You can get the friction of the roadway. If the tire was rotating, those kind of pieces of evidence, you start to back up those kind of speeds to where the impact was, to pre-impact, so on and so forth. So a couple different things that investigators are going to use. One is they're going to look and see if this car made any kind of yaw marks. And yaw marks is just a side slipping tire that's moving still in a direction. It's not locked. It's kind of slide slipping. And then the front tires cross over the rear, and it's a very definitive mark. And you saw in the video, the guy got sideways, and so he lost control, obviously. So what investigators can do, if there's enough evidence on the roadway prior to impact, is they'll measure what's called a chord and middle ordinate. And they'll take a measurement based on those chord and middle ordinates. They'll put it into a mathematical equation, and they'll start to get a minimum critical speed that the car was going. Say that's what the speed is? No, that's one indicator, because we still have a lot more data to work with. All right. Another thing they can look at is crush. Now, crush is a technique that you can use. When you see the crash test dummies where they go into the wall and they smash into it? Well, those speeds are set for a reason, and they want to know how much crush damage is going to do to that car. And they can do that numerous times to get how much damage is done at what amount of speed. Why that's handy for an investigator is that we can use that data and we can kind of rebuild, as you saw in that one picture here, is that you can use these rods, and if the car is crushed in, you basically take those rods and you build it straight again. If it's crushed in the front, you take the rods and you kind of build the rods out again. I'll show you another example here. This is an example of, you can see on the diagram, the far left, that is where a full car was. Center mass, all of a sudden it starts to crush, and it crushes in the front of it. You start to take these specific measurements across the damage, and you start to input that into a crush software, and then it starts to give you the energy that it took to make that damage in that car. And once you get that energy, then you can start working your way back with skids and yaw marks and CDR, and you start to build this entire picture of minimum speed this guy had to have been going before he killed the sergeant and left his wife and kids without a father and a husband. So that's just a little bit of an overview. I know this was kind of a short video, but it caught my mind to say, I wonder if people are asking this question on how investigators kind of come up with speeds to charge kids with reckless or manslaughter or something like that. And this is just a few very, very 30,000-foot level tools that investigators are going to use, but it's all mathematical. If you didn't know, like physics, this probably isn't for you, because I forgot all about it when I started going through all this training. But at the very end of it, it really did come in handy, because you're able to at least tell the story, present that to the DA's office if they're going to file charges or not. So please pray for this family. This officer that served 24 years in this community did not deserve to go out this way by some kid that thinks he's a hot rodder instead of being responsible. So I hope that helps understand a little bit of the investigative techniques, and I will see you in the next video. And if you are not subscribed, consider subscribing, and feel free to leave a comment below. I'll try to answer them as much as I can. All right, guys, take care. Thanks much.